Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just watching the waiting room and admitting people as they arrive or as they come to the. So I'll.
Sounds good.
Well, that was exciting. I've never had to try to like do church and talk to Richard and email Julie at the same time. I hope it didn't look too distracted.
Not at all.
Your volume is not that great, Allison. I don't know what's going on.
I don't either.
Okay.
I think it's my voice.
Can the rest of you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear Richard fine, and I can hear Allison fine too.
Well, I'll just talk really loud. Good morning, Dawn. You're muted. Hi, Charisse.
Hi, everyone.
Is there anything you want to talk about, Charisse? We're not going to start till 11:15. So if you have something you want to ask, get clear on.
I love you all, and I think you're all amazing. Other than that, we're good.
I'm celebrating with an Egg McMuffin.
Oh, you're being naughty.
I am really naughty.
I had Premier Protein just put out a new cereal. It's pretty good. Had it with oat milk this morning. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, I don't eat cereal, so maybe.
I have some keto cereal that I just can't stand.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
Should both Jack and me be on separate? I think we're across from each other.
I think the answer is yes or no.
One of you has to be on mute, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
It makes it easier for the voting. If we were going to have like a test question, like I think the test question is, do you prefer cake or pie? That's going to be the test question. But otherwise, if everybody is not on their own device, we thought maybe we could just monitor the chat. And then if if there are two of you on one internet connection, then we would just note that, right? That would be.
Darlene loves it that I have to be muted.
Who got to choose who gets to be muted? That's all I want to say. Who got to choose?
Allison, right now it's being recorded to the cloud. Do you want to continue that? Okay, I thought so.
I'm sure everybody will enjoy this banter. So Richard, you will, I was going to pray, and then I'll turn it over to you, and that's it. And then
That's it.
Charisse and Brian and Don duke it out for the rest of it.
Yes.
I don't think we have Brian here yet, unless he's one of the phone numbers.
No, he'll be on screen.
Okay.
So Susie, if you will make Don, I don't know, I think just Charisse and Brian, when he comes on, just make them have the ability to share their screen.
Okay, I think I can make, let's see here. Allison, I think since you're the host, I think you have to do that. I don't have the option.
I love it. I love it. I love
You have all the power.
I just did my test question. I like cake.
Okay.
I like them both.
I'm sorry.
That's not an option.
Confused, Lisa.
It was an option.
Yes or no?
Oh, is
Yes,
it?
it was.
I hadn't even-
Or it was an
Yes.
option. I didn't pay enough attention. I should have chosen both.
Oops.
Just a minute, honey. I can't. This won't turn on for some reason. So let me. You can't hear anything.
Therese, can you tell me at the bottom of your screen, do you have the option to share your screen?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay.
I don't know.
Wayne Centron is looking a little curvy.
There's his face.
What was that, Viviana?
I wear my cheap shirt.
Here's our friend Brian French. All right, we still have about 6 minutes, so we'll just good to see everyone. I hope you're all well. I will say that I'm thinking of adding a prayer something for the day of the inauguration. There's a lot of stuff that the National Church is doing. I'll send that out early next week, and you all can have access to that.
That would be lovely, Allison. I know I've personally tried to clear my work calendar just
Yeah.
in case the world gets a little crazy.
Yeah.
So
the church is, Bishop Curry is leading a vigil on Tuesday night from 7 to 9. I don't know, but I think those are all Eastern times. The National Cathedral, of course, always offers a prayer service, that the president-elect is invited to the day of. So that will be broadcast. And then just some prayers. If you're not able to do any of those things because of your schedules, maybe just a way you can pray together with your family, right? That centers your life differently than the news media will be centering it, attempting to center it.
So we have 4 minutes, folks. I think it's 11:11, so we are going to get started right at 11:15.
Richard or anyone, are there any documents that we could have or should have had to look at in preparation for this, or are you just going to do it all by presentation?
Yeah, it's all by presentation, and of course, it'll be available after the meeting.
Okay.
So I mean, there will be a way to see them if you want to peruse them up close. But
Okay.
Everything that you don't need to download anything. Everything that's going to be presented will be presented on the screen.
Perfect. I was just verifying. I hadn't seen anything, and I just wanted to make sure I hadn't missed something. Thank you.
You're good. Yep.
the vestry just approved this budget on Friday night. So it's fresh off the presses.
This is Judith Heath. I'm logged in, but you can't see me for some reason, and I can't figure out how to make it work. So I'm just going to be the faceless voice.
Oh, well, it's good to hear your faceless voice.
Thank you.
I would love to see your face, but maybe you'll figure it
I
out.
don't know.
Yeah. Oh.
Testing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yes, we can hear
This
you.
is Jim Post.
Hi, Jim.
Jim Post.
Yeah.
I have my phone by my ear, and my trusty wife is behind me on the computer.
Okay, very good. I'm going to ask that everybody mute themselves unless they have something, when it comes time for conversation. It will make the sound clearer for all the participants. Well, all the finance committee is here, so that's a good sign. Most of the vestry. And the clerk of the vestry is here, so that makes it official. All right, it is 11:15. We welcome everyone to this budget portion of the meeting of Christ Church Episcopal Parish in Lake Oswego, doing it on this way as preparation for our annual meeting next week. I'm going to ask, we will go through some of the particulars after I pray. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with all who take counsel at Christ's church for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I introduce Richard Genesee, our senior warden, to conduct the business of the meeting.
Great. Thank you, Allison. And good morning, everyone. Good morning, Christ Church. This is our budget meeting, our public budget meeting, which we specifically started doing so that we could dedicate a whole meeting to the budget specifically and have that not take up the balance of the parish annual meeting, which is next week, in which we'll conduct other business of the parish, including new vestry members, new senior warden, etc. So we didn't want, in case there were a lot of questions on the budget, we didn't want that to be the focus of exclusively the annual meeting next week. So we dedicated a whole meeting just to the budget this week. So in short order, I will turn it over to our co-finance chairs, Sharice Bigger and Brian French, and they will take us through the budget, who Allison, as Allison alluded to, was literally just approved by the vestry, within the last 24 hours. So exciting. And, it's been a tumultuous year, as all of us know, but I think that we can be very proud of where we've ended up through all of your generosity. And, although, there are highlights and lowlights, low points, I think that overall it is a very strong budget, and one that I'm very proud of is a balanced budget, as we've always committed to on the vestry. So without further ado than that, I will turn it over to Brian and Sharice. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Brian, you are on mute, my friend.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Allison, for that. We're going to walk you through today the financials. What we're going to do is just to go over and recap and let you know who was on the finance committee. Then we're going to go through the revenue and expense, and also the balance sheet, go through the financials for 2020. And then we're going to go into the budget for 2021 as the last piece of that. So and then after we go through the budget for 2021, we'll have a Q&A session, questions that you can ask. We have plenty of time set up for questions as we go through today. So the finance committee, just to let you know who's on the finance committee, Sharice and myself are the co-chair. Don Caldwell is the treasurer. Paul Sauer is the person leading up the pledges and also is a tremendous support for the finance committee. Lisa Trone is a recent member, and she's definitely helping us with a lot of our processes and procedures, among other areas. And then the senior warden is also part of the finance committee. Right now that's Richard, but as next week, that whoever becomes the senior warden is going to then rotate on as Richard rotates off. And then the rector, Allison is part of the finance committee. So Sharice.
All right, so just some highlights from 2020 so that everyone has an idea where we're starting from. We have paid down on the loan that is due to the unrestricted endowment. We've paid $40,000 down of that $100,000 loan. 20 of that was in January and 20 of it in December. And we are fully caught up on the commitment we have made to ourselves to that unrestricted endowment repayment. We have also paid $40,000 to the replenished cash, which was the other main commitment that we made to ourselves. Again, 20K January, 20K December. So again, on that commitment that we have made over the 5 years to repay those $2 amounts, we are fully caught up, which is excellent news. So go team. Okay, the PPP loan that we received as part of the COVID relief funds, we received $114,000 in April. That loan was fully forgiven in December. So we are going to be able to keep that and use it towards our payroll, which was a wonderful breath of fresh air for the year. The unpaid total DPA that we have in, I guess, a liability to the diocese right now is sitting at $340,000. This year, we have been paying 15% of the annual amount according to our agreement with the diocese. We were able to pay that amount this year, which is great. We haven't been able to always pay what we have wanted to pay on the DPA, and so we were able to do that this year. So again, a good bit of good news. We have made some major IT upgrades this year, which we are all taking advantage of as we work in this new virtual reality. What is wonderful about that is that we have not had to foot that entire bill ourselves. So the city of Lake Oswego kicked in about $10,000 for that. We have a grant from the diocese that took about $10,000 of that, and then we've paid about $11,000. So that's That's wonderful. It's going to enable us to really modify how we do church, even as we come back together in person, that we will still have ways to reach out in a broader virtual way. HVAC repair, we are getting that fixed. Yay, some of that is a little bit still in process. That's been about $15,000. Our buildings and grounds committee is on the up and up, getting some new breath into it. And so we may see more things coming this year as we really itemize what we want to do to keep our building healthy. But the HVAC was one of those things that we looked at this year. And then with the city itself, we did extend the contract with the city and expanded the relationship in 2020 to include teens and adults. We expect that relationship to last through this year and potentially longer. Huge win for our parish. That is a great partnership that we have with the city, not just on a monetary side for us, but also showing people in Lake Oswego what we do as a parish, right? Bringing people into our building. At that point, before we get into the money part of things, are there any questions about any of the highlights? All right, Brian, I think back to you, or are we handing it over to Paul?
We're handing it over to Paul.
All right, and then Paul is going to run through our pledge recap for 2020 and 2021. All yours, Paul.
Mr.
Wait,
Dotton,
before,
Oh, I'm sorry.
one minute. Mr. Dotton has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Dotton.
I'm sorry. I didn't know how you wanted to get us to, I raised my hand and I wasn't sure if that's how you want to do it. So would you like us to just voice our questions if we have them?
Yeah, voice your question. We're happy to take them. If they're about these things, if it's more budget related, we'll likely get to it. And if it's something that we are going to cover, I will pin it forward. But if it's something about this, we're happy to address it.
Well, it's the big oversight, and I just want to be sure I understand the $20,000. So the forgiven loan we're effectively restoring the $20,000 that was part of the severance, and that was out there last year. We had to give notice to everybody about it, so I think everybody understands. And that's what that's for. Is that right?
That is correct. So yes, absolutely.
And then the Replenish cash reserve is restoration of the unrestricted endowment. Is that right?
So there's two separate $100,000 items that are being paid back. The reason they both say 40K for this year is because we did not pay them back in 2019. And so we caught ourselves up in 2020. But one is to replenish the cash that we have taken from ourselves to pay, right? And one is putting back in the endowment.
Did that come from the unrestricted endowment?
Don, do you want to take that one and how we're accounting for it with the official accounting language?
Sure. Yeah, sure. 20,000, well, 42 20,000s went back to the unrestricted endowment. That's where the 100,000 came from to loan to the previous rector for his house that was forgiven. So we're paying that back, that $100,000 back, 20,000 a year over 5 years, and we've made 2 payments on that. The other $100,000 is the $100,000 that we lost. In other words, we had a negative, we didn't make money. We didn't have a zero result for the year. We actually lost $100,000. Now, the $100,000 is kind of there because we have a bunch of restricted funds that, I mean, there's money in there, but we made a commitment to replenish that money by not spending and not having a zero balance organization, that we're going to make $20,000 a year and replenish that cash over time. It's a retained earnings type thing.
Yeah, but where did it come from? Where did the 100,000 come from? What is it we're replenishing? That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, okay, so where did the money come from? We had it, okay? We had it since inception. It was in a retained earnings type environment. If I was looking at the balance sheet, we have a bunch of semi-restricted funds. We have a school scholarship fund for 10,000. We have a Zorkin Dual fund for 10,000. We have the $36,000 from the sales of plaques that we are restricting. But if you looked at our cash in our bank, we don't, those are not all covered. And they haven't been.
So just to be clear, not only did we take money out of the restricted endowment, but we took some money out of the of the unrestricted endowment. We took some money in order to balance the budget from restricted funds. Is that right?
Yeah, but it's not the endowments, it's just restricted funds.
Is it restricted by the donor?
Yes.
Then that's restricted endowment. I'm talking about,
Not
I'm not trying to
endowment.
argue with you. I really am just
Right.
trying to understand.
Right, I'm saying not the endowment. The endowment funds are monies that are set aside and put and being invested that we are using for operations. This is like, okay, somebody gave, okay, we have $4,000 in a music fund. Somebody said, I want to support the music program at Christ Church. Here's $4,000. So it goes into a music fund, not an endowment fund, just a music fund. So that money is available to be used for music for forever. So we've had this argument for years in terms of when we went, what some people would like to have happen is that we have a savings account that covers all of these restricted funds, and that really all they are is a promise to pay. And you don't necessarily need to have cash sitting there to pay them.
Wait a minute. You may be right from accounting, but as a matter of law, I can tell you that is not correct. That's not the position the Oregon Attorney General's office would take about restricted gifts. And I deal with this for lots of different churches, Don, and
Okay, but Mike, maybe we ought to take that offline sometime. You know, in terms of we are getting back to an area where the money is sitting there waiting to be able to pay for those restricted funds. And that's, you can't just say, do it, right? Because it happened.
well, I'm happy to take this offline with you, Don, but I also want to be really sure that we are not putting ourselves in a vulnerable position. And I wanted to know, for purposes of the budget, what are
Mike.
Okay, why don't
Hey,
we?
Mike, yeah, let's take this offline. But Mike, I don't know if you know this, but I am looking for members just like you. And Brian is on the finance committee. I'm not sure if you'd want to come join us sometimes. We'd love your
I
input.
have to get the bishop's permission to do it because
Okay.
but yes, I'd be, if
Okay.
you'd allow me, I'd be happy to, just because this is something I've been struggling with with a lot of different churches, and a lot of people don't understand the gift, what the gift requirements are, and I want to make sure we don't run afoul of those, because that.
Absolutely. Let's definitely talk offline about it and make sure that we are in the right.
Yeah, I'm happy
direction.
to do that with you, Don,
Okay.
and Charisse, if you'd like.
That'd be lovely.
I'm really not trying to be difficult. I'm really very much just trying to understand this.
No worries.
Yeah, and with Charisse and I being being our first year, I think it would be great to sit down with you and get your perspective of everything.
Okay, other questions, not as hard as Mike's.
I don't think this is as hard a question, but so the $80,000 carry forward is actually a sum of money by which we had as a carry forward in cash as a result of not spending as much or having more revenue from 2020, right?
Correct. That is the pledges and additional income that we got from the endowments and also from City of Lake Oswego,
and the Ppp
were greater than the expenses that we had during the year.
that it is remarkable how often this church over the 27 years or whatever I've been attending has been saved by that carry forward each year. It's remarkable.
Sydney Fitzpatrick has a question.
Go for it, Sydney.
It's not so much a question as I really wanted to follow up on what Mike said, because while we can take this discussion offline, it has to be a broad discussion, because this is vitally important. And I'm very concerned about this, deeply concerned about this. So I just wanted to add that in, because it's what was said by Don, and I'm not arguing with Don from, as Mike said, from an accounting perspective, but I've been working in the not-for-profit field for decades, and that just can't happen. It just can't happen. We have to address that in a different way. Thanks.
Thanks, Sydney.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or hands raised?
Yeah, I have a question. Mark Peterson. Could somebody explain the concept of the DPA? Because I think there's a number of people who still don't know what that is and what our commitment is to the diocese.
Allison, you are probably best poised to do that. Do you want to take that?
I'm happy to do that. It's proportional giving that the diocese calculates for us based on the number of pledges that we receive, minus what we spend for outreach and capital improvements. So if you think of it like a tithe that we make to the diocese to support their work in the world. And each diocese also has proportional giving that goes to the national church. So it's well established in our ecclesiology that that's how we mutually support each other financially. So that number comes out every late October, early November, and it's usually about, I'm not going to be able to tell you the exact calculations right now, Mark, but it can be as high as 18% of a certain amount of the money, right? And so we have not been able to fulfill that obligation for the last 2 years, which is what that $340,000 liability represents. We have continued to pay something. So in 2019, we paid 10% of what we owed, which is significant reduction for the diocese. If you think about it, we were one of the largest DPAs in the diocese. And so not having our contribution to the operating funds of the diocese made a big difference. This year, we were able to up that to 15%, but we're still showing that liability because technically it's still something we owe. The diocese has a way to stay in communion with them about past due amounts. This doesn't damage our reputation with them in any way because we've done this all completely in conversation with the bishop, with the canons, apparent, you know what I'm saying. So it's totally above board in that sense, but I think it's good for people to know, kind of what we had promised. Now it's based on a 3-year rolling amount. Okay, so eventually, because we know that our pledge units have dropped and the amount of giving has decreased, we will see that number, which now I think for this year was $169,000. We will see that decrease significantly, right? But it takes, it's as I said, it's a rolling average. It's also based on the numbers that we submit to the parochial report to the national church. So it's all of that mixed together. Do you have any questions specific to what I've said?
No, I just wondered if it's cumulative, like if we didn't pay last year, then does that up what we owe this year? And then if we pay less next year, does that deduct from? Okay.
Yeah, it is cumulative in the sense that it is something still owed. This is the process by which the diocese works. What they like is that if we get to a point where we can sign an agreement that says we are going to pay a certain amount we're going to try to get to 100% of what we owe for 1 year. And if we meet that agreement, generally what happens is the furthest out year is forgiven, canceled. Once we get back to full compliance, right?
Okay.
So it's going to be a long process, but we thought as a vestry and as a finance committee, we thought it was important for people to know kind of what, it's just sometimes good to know. There's no punishment in it, but sometimes it's just good to know what we're not paying, right? There are consequences, for a reduced budget.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so another question in the chat on the city contract. When we rolled in the new part of the city, the new teens and adults program, we moved that into a more of one singular contract. And it does have renewal options and terms on it, but there's absolutely dates on it. Specifically, the adult program is only supposed to run for a year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Allison. But the program with the classes and things like that, they're intending to run longer. The city does not have room for that right now in their own process. And I don't think their renovations are on track, correct, Allison?
Correct. We extended the contract and wrapped into it the adult center's needs for during their renovation time for the next year. So, but we went ahead then and renewed our contract with the city for another 3 years.
Next question, Richard.
It's not a question so much as a statement and a point of clarity I wanted to make. Well, with respect to what the points that Mike and Sydney were raising, critically important points that we absolutely have to sort through because of the issue that there's been with those same questions previously. But I wanted to make it clear to everybody on the call today that from a cash perspective, which has not been true in the past, we are absolutely in the positive. So I don't want any of that previous discussion to have anyone questioning or thinking for a minute, well, so are we in trouble, or do we not have cash to cover our restricted funds or anything of that nature? Getting to the bottom line, which we will as we get through the budget, this is a cash positive budget. It's balanced and it's also positive. So I didn't want the previous discussion to make anyone unclear or unsure that we're still in a very positive financial position.
Richard, though, just to be clear, this is an issue that we have to deal with regularly, and we have to deal with the Oregon Department of Justice about this regularly. You can't borrow restricted funds for another purpose. So
yeah, I'm not arguing that point, Mike. Totally get it. Not arguing that point at all. But I'm just saying, in some, when you look at the budget.
Richard,
I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Funds are being repaid, apparently, is because they were taken from sources.
Mike? So I'm not arguing that point. I hear what you're saying, and I think it is vitally important. I'm just saying that as you look at the budget as a whole, the budget is positive, and the budget is, in other words, it doesn't leave us in a position, as has been argued in the past or debated in the past, are we in jeopardy of not being able to cover all of our obligations? That's the point I was just making.
So my question is there any revenue forecasted in this budget that would have to come from restricted funds that are restricted for a purpose not included? I see Ellen shaking her hand.
No, absolutely not.
So that's good, because I think what happened in the past was we were doing things we shouldn't have been doing, and that's all I'm concerned about is we're doing the right thing in repaying them, although we probably never should have taken funds from sources that were restricted. But what you're telling me now, and Allison is shaking her head, is that this budget does not remove any funds from restricted funds, whether we call them endowment or not. Whether they get put in the endowment or not, they're still restricted. And what you're saying is no, that's not the case, and that's reassuring. Thank you.
That's correct. Kim French had her hand up, and I want to know if there was an accident or you had something to say.
No, I just wanted to point out that these were actions taken 2 years ago that we're repaying ourselves. This is not current stuff that we're taking out of those funds. This is the stuff that we're still trying to recover from 2 years ago. And so just want to make that point of a clarification.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions? I don't see other hands up on the participant list. Any other, oh, no, hold on, maybe. No, that's Richard, never mind. Anyone else? All right, Paul, you are up.
Cool. Great. So I'm Paul Sauer. I'm the registrar and the giving coordinator. And so this is my slide here. And so I've got really good news to report, both for 2020 and for 2021. So just going through the line item there on the 2020 recap, and let me back up and give you a little broader view. So we have general stewardship, which is all of the contributions that come in that are not earmarked for anything in particular, like an outreach or a memorial garden or anything else. This is strictly money that comes in that we can use as part of our budget, okay? And so we get there by having pledges. And in 2020, we had what's listed there, 387,000 in pledges, and we had 147 pledgers, individual pledgers, okay? Could be families or could be individuals, but 147 of those, okay? I see there that we have, 77% of the folks fulfilled their entire pledge, okay? Why didn't we get all of the people fulfilling? Well, we have a number of things. We've had some deaths, we've had some transfers, and in 2020, it was a difficult year. Various folks had different life events occur. So we didn't get to 100%. When I go to the next line there, total received, in addition to our pledging members that give, we have two other kind of sub-sources of money. We have people that don't pledge, but do give on a semi-regular or regular basis. And then of those that do pledge, there are a certain number of them that over give their pledge. So they might have pledged $10, but gave 15. This is just so I can do this in my head. The numbers are much larger than that, but that's what's going on there. So the total amount that we received, even though pledge was 387, we got up to 478 there. Excuse me, I'm on my phone, so I can't read that. Maybe it's 476 in total received. So we have the 381 of the pledges plus excess of the pledge. We had about 60 plus people that gave that weren't pledgers, and then, 60,000 in over pledging, and then the 54,000 from non-pledgers, okay? And there was messages and emails and letters and calls that went out at the end of the year, and we were able to convert some of those non-pledgers to pledgers, because we like to have any amount of money that we can to come in to help with a budget and all of the different things that we want to do with our church. And we'll accept the money whether you pledge or not. But the goal is to be able to anticipate what we're going to get so we can set up a budget. And that helps us spend the money much more efficiently rather than simply getting surprises, okay? So there's a little place there where you can donate, and we take money however you'd like to give it, online, with your phone, text to give. We have a number of people that send checks in, and that's perfectly fine as well. However you can give us the money, we will try to take that, okay? In 2021, our numbers right now, we have 124 pledgers, and the total amount pledged is 392,000, I think we're up to 398, yes. 398, okay? And so things look good. And out of that 398, we have already received about $86,000. So that's good news as well. We like everyone who's on the call who's pledging to try to keep their pledge current on at least a monthly basis or quarterly basis. I understand some folks have to wait till the end of the year, but that helps us, at least the finance committee, sleep better at night if we know the money is actually coming in that's been pledged. But there's a number of folks that were able to pay their pledge at the end of last year and at the beginning of this year. And then we've had a good January. We're only 15 days into it. So I think all of this is really good news. We're still accepting pledges. And so if there's anyone on the call that hasn't pledged or wants to increase their pledge, give me a call or let me know. And there's lots of ways to do that. Lastly, we'll be sending out the giving statements, the tax statements, sometime this week, so that you can have that for tax return purposes. Are there any questions?
So I'm going to just ask a question, and you can may defer me if we're going to drill down further into the numbers, but it looks like from a revenue standpoint, we forecast revenue of 692,000. Then we have pledges of 398,000. That's 294,000 that we don't have pledged. Of that, how much, so of that balance remaining, how much of that is made up by the city of Portland, or pardon me, city of Lake Oswego revenues?
And that's a question, Brian and Don.
Yeah,
we're going to go over that when we get to the budget for 2021.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for their generosity, because if you'll notice that we have fewer pledges, it's kind of an unfortunate thing, and yet the amount pledged is increased. And so we ask everyone to kind of consider increasing their pledge by 10%, and most everyone did that pledged. So I'm very grateful. We are all very grateful for that, and about listening and praying about what is your part to give. So that's just my little bit of gratitude for all of you. Oh, and for Paul. Thank you.
Paul's the best. Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions on pledges? Okay. And then we just at the bottom of the page, the different places where you can pledge via the pledge form, and then also on Wet Realm. And then contact, if you do need to contact them, it's membership@ccparish.org. Okay. So if there's no more questions, I'm going to jump over to the next slide and talk about the revenues. So the revenues and expenses for 2020, as we have this, this is the same format we went through at our mid-year review. We have on the left-hand side, we have the revenue and expense columns broken out. And then we have the first column we see is going to be our actual. And then the second is our balance, is our budget, and then the difference where we are. So the first one with the revenues, as we come through, we can see that the revenues, from an actual standpoint, were greater than what we were expecting, which is great. A large portion of that was related to the PPP loan that we received from the government as part of the COVID. We did receive that, and as we said previously, that was forgiven in December. And then some of the additional revenue that we got, that we had, were with the pledges. The additional pledges that we received during the year brought us, with those two numbers, up to $193,000 of excess income than we had in our budget. As we go through the items with the expenses, the compensation, we had some additional expenses of they came in at $70,000 more than what was budgeted for. The bulk of that was related to the accrued precinct charge costs that we had that were not, as we were going through it, as part of the precinct charge taking over, there was some additional compensation worked out that was captured in the 2020 budget. And so we were catching up for the current and also for some previous prior periods getting caught up to, and that was approximately $70,000 to get us caught up with the compensation with the priest in charge. The facilities, we had a couple items on the facilities that came up. One was the HVAC, which was a very large expense that we weren't expecting. And then also some of the payments for the upgrade of the IT area. So those two things kind of put us over what we were expecting from a budget standpoint. And then the other, we came in a little bit under that. Part of that was because we were not meeting at church. So there was other costs that we normally see that we did not need to incur. So overall, from an actual standpoint, we had $120,000 where our revenue was greater than our expenses. And so that is, we take that 20,000 for the repayment of the endowment and 20,000 for the repayment to replenish the cash. That gets us to 80,000. That's what we're using to carry over for our 2021 budget. As we go through here. So I'd like to pause right here and see if there's any questions from the team.
Brian, I can't figure out where that 120 comes from. I can't make these numbers add up. Can somebody help me?
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me grab what I apologize. We were working on here. You are correct. Total expenses. So we had the compensation was 475. The facilities was 114. The other expense was 157. And then the expenses, total expenses is actually 747.
Brian and I were messing around with this PowerPoint for like 2 hours last night, and there was a lot of number changes. So our apologies if there are any errors on here. Thank you for catching that.
And the same thing for the budget. I apologize for that.
So then, Brian,
Okay.
what is the
Thank
budget?
you.
What is the budget expenses number supposed to be? The budget total.
Let me grab that.
Well, Brian's pulling that up. We are over budget, and that is mainly due to, as we were talking about, the expenses in the building, the HVAC and the IT, and the compensation difference from the accrual that we did not locate until early 2020 that had to have some catch up from 2019. So the budget was off. It was off for two main reasons, the building and compensation. As Brian's pulling that, are there other questions about 2020?
Brian, the number 653,089.
Oh. $653,089.
089.
Okay. Thanks, Don.
No, maybe not. 656,089. Sorry.
Any other questions? I don't see hands raised in the chat. Anyone on screen?
Okay.
So I was trying to follow that on the screen, and it may just be that the screen that wasn't making in the difference column wasn't doing the addition and subtraction, but I'm still having trouble following those numbers too.
Yeah, and the total expense number is 91,354. Does that work now, Mike?
So I'm off the top of my head, I don't see how we get to the $101,000 net.
The difference between the 120 we ended up with, the 19,000 we were planning on, is 101,000 difference.
Well, if we started with the revenues and we simply took the difference in expenses.
193 plus minus 91, doesn't that equal 100?
Oh, total, okay. I'm sorry, yeah. Yep. Good, thank you. That's a lot clearer. Thank you very much.
Understood.
Yeah, apologize for that confusion on there.
The big takeaway though from this slide though is the actuals column. So that 120 net is what we are going to be using as that carryover after those two repayments. So that's the big number to look at from this.
Okay. Okay, so now we're looking at the balance sheet and we're looking at comparison of what we were as of the end of 2019 versus where we are as of the end of 2020. So our cash position increased by $62,000. And the investments, as we went through it, the cash increased due to the pledge amount and the excess pledges that we received, and also the PPP loan that we received. Those things were all factors in to our increase in cash. The investments, also, there was a strong stock market in there. Net was 12,000, but we also had pulled out as part of the covenants of the endowments that we are using them to pay for certain items from the endowments to pay for some of the funding, like the building and some other items that we're using to cover costs for the church. The other assets, the buildings and all that, that is, those assets did not change. And then we get down to our current liabilities. Our current liabilities did decrease as we go through them. Started out almost 70,000 or approximately 45,000. The other liabilities, this is made up of two items that we had increased. One had increased the DPA of $163,000. It increased by during the year. The other is the repayment of the loan decreased from 100,000 down to 60,000. So we kind of had that offsetting net effect on with the DPA and also the loan. So that's even though the DPA went up, it was offset by us repaying the endowment, the money taken out for the endowments. And then that leaves us with the total liability. We see that our liabilities have increased, as we talked about, mainly because of the DPA and then the offsetting of the current liabilities and all as we go through it. So overall, I think it was a good year from a balance sheet perspective. As we go through it, I think the balance sheet is a little bit, especially when looking at our cash and the side of things are looking better. It's if we take the DPA, set that aside, it was a very good year for the revenue and for the balance sheet. Okay, I want to pause there and see if there's any questions on the balance sheet.
I don't see any hands, Brian. Anyone want to unmute and speak up?
Okay. Sharice?
Awesome. And will you monitor the participant chat
Yes.
for hands, Brian? Thank you. Okay, so I get the fun part of talking about the 2021 budget. So what we have tried to do as a finance committee is really put together, knowing that we're in a bit of a fluctuative, I think I made that up, cash position, and that we are really working on putting our cash reserves back. We've put together a bare bones budget, but one that aligns with the priorities that we've been given from the vestry. What we have had to do that in the budget is eliminate the associate rector position and the associate sexton position. And we'll get into why we did that as we get into the next slide. Mainly because as we're working towards those full repayments of that loan, that cash reserve that's been a hot topic today, and plus the DPA, we need to move ourselves forward to paying more of the DPA. So in 2021, we're making a commitment to pay 40% of the DPA. That's going to bring that number up to $70,000. Okay, that's a big chunk of change. And we're going to continue to repay those other $200,000 marks in those $20,000 increments. Okay, so those are the broad highlights on the budget. Will you go to the next slide, Brian, and we can pull the numbers up? Okay, so what we're looking at here is you have the actual 2020 number, what we're budgeting for 2021, and then of course the difference, okay? In 2020, we did not have a carry forward. We are bringing that $80,000 of revenue carried forward into the 2021 budget as an asset, all right? With revenue, projected revenue, that is pledging, that is allowed pulls from our endowment funds, okay, things that are in line with how they've been given. The city of Lake Oswego, the things that come in as revenue from pledges, from giving, you name it, okay, that big chunk of change is almost $700,000, okay? We had more revenue in 2020. Again, that came from the PPP. We do not know if we're going to qualify for the new PPP program. We're not counting on that. We are truly looking at, if this is all we have access to this year, we need to find a budget that uses the carryover and the revenue that we have. So when we look at that and we say, how can we break this out? We're looking at compensation. Inside of compensation, with the elimination of an associate rector that we've had at the end of this year, that has caused some increases in some of our hourly pay. And it's also, as we've looked at coming into having a new rector, we want to give the max flexibility of who we hire. And so we are budgeting as high a possible dollar amount that aligns with the salary and housing and utility allowance given by the diocese to hire someone with some experience that can lead our parish forward. And it also covers some potential for additional benefits. So should the new rector coming in have a family that we need to cover? So we've really put in a high dollar number on that rector compensation. So in the compensation column, all of that is accounted for. Facilities, we've looked at that and we don't believe we're going to have the IT spend again this year. We think most of that is already covered. So that has been pulled out, but we've left all of the other items in there for facilities because we do have some repairs that maybe need to be done for the building. Other is everything else we pay for. This is a major increase from 2020. That is from the DPA, okay? There are also some potential items in other that are related to the rector search. So that $44,000 increase that you're seeing here on the other line and the difference is the DPA and rector search, okay? Where that leaves us is fairly similar in total expenses, and it's a full balance budget with a $300 cash in hand, okay? Parish-driven revenue is given money from the parish. It is money from endowment. It is excess. It's really things that come from the people of the parish, right? But mainly money from the endowments. Used correctly, not borrowed against, to be really clear. Questions? Mike.
Can you tell me how much we have remaining in the unrestricted endowment?
Oh, do you have that available, Brian, to pull up?
Let me check real.
Don might have it.
Yeah. No, we have it all pulled up. We were looking at it last night.
The unrestricted endowment, we have two amounts. The net is approximately 274,000.
That's at year end 2020?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Additional questions?
Yeah, can you?
Don's gonna get in. The restricted endowment, we have, the unrestricted endowment, we have $264,000 in investments. We have $45,000, which is the remainder of the secured loan from Allison's purchase of her home. She used the additional money that she was paid to pay down her loan from $100,000 to $45,000. And then there's $60,000 of that we owe. We, the parish, owe the unrestricted. So what's that? So that's 264 plus 105. So that'd be 370 about. In terms of the assets of the unrestricted endowment.
Arlene, did you have a question?
Yes. Can you indicate who is being paid in the compensation beyond the rector?
Absolutely. It is everyone we pay. So rector and all ladies. So that is Allison, Susie, Jane, Aubrey. It's everybody. Everyone that we give money to in any way to work for the church comes out of compensation. That's not a contractor, someone that we hire. We have a separate line item for contractors. So if we hire a singer for music, that goes into music contractor. But it's anyone that is an employee of the church.
Yeah, so as Elaine said, who are the employees?
Right, so our sexton, sure. Our sexton, our business manager, our bookkeeper, if it's the type of thing where we need to list out who everyone is, if you're looking to contact people, we can send that out as well. But it's youth director, it's children's formation, Jane, absolutely. Yeah, you should absolutely get to know this. It should be written somewhere. Is there a staff list online? Does anyone know?
On the website.
Should be on the website, yeah.
Of course, I've been wrong before. So it will be in the annual meeting next week. I can guarantee that.
Oh, Shannon just put in the chat that there is an org chart in the parish profile, and that is for sure on the website.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Sandra?
I have a question for Don. What he had just said about the unrestricted endowment, he said 264 in investments, $40,000 from a home loan. That's a payback. But then there was a $60,000 and I didn't quite get what that was.
Okay. So I said 264 in investments. Several years ago, we lent the rector $100,000 to assist him in buying his home. Also, in addition, we lent the associate rector $100,000 to buy her home. The rector, when he left, the church decided to forgive that loan. So we moved that $100,000 from a loan to the rector to a loan from the church, from the church. So we, the parish, took on that responsibility to the unrestricted endowment to pay that back. And that is the $100,000 that we've been talking about, that we paid back $20,000 at the beginning of this year and another $20,000 at the end of the year.
All right, well, what is the 60,000 you mentioned at the end?
That's the 60,000 that's left, because it was 100.
Oh, that's the remaining.
Yes, that's the remaining amount.
All right, thank you.
So Don, in a way, that's an account receivable effectively for the church. Is that right? It's a receivable of $60,000.
A receivable for the unrestricted endowment, a payable for the general fund.
Yeah, that's being paid in $20,000 or whatever increment we can pay each year.
Yes.
Back to that. Okay, thank you. But how? I don't understand how that would be part of considered as cash in the unrestricted endowment. It's a loan effectively. It's a receivable.
It's an
from
asset.
ourselves.
Well, okay. The other thing, the 264 isn't cash either. That's investments. So it's an investment and the unrestricted endowment has 264,000 of investments sitting over at Ferguson Wellman, and then it has 2 receivables as assets.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Okay, Sharice, there were some questions in the chat.
If Chelsea is not on the list, she is an employee still.
What does an associate sexton do? I don't know. I have no idea. We don't have one. I know our sexton's doing that job, so I have no idea. Allison, what does an associate sexton do?
In the past, they ran security for the building. They helped with sound. They, just having 2 people. You remember how big I know it's hard to, we might not remember now how big our plant is, how many doors there are, how many people come and go. And so having 2 people at the time seemed like the best use of our time. So that's how we, and the likelihood is we won't be fully in the building until July or later. So.
Question.
Yes.
Nope. I have a question.
Yes, Paul.
So just in case somebody was going to look at the reference that was given on the profile, since that profile was put out, a couple things have changed. It is listed, the youth program open, and now we have Aubrey. And then the other position that's not listed there that is part of that compensation is Michael Sanchez as IT Verger or whatever. So in case somebody was looking and they go, oh, what about fill in the blank? That's the one piece that's not there. Everything else looks correct.
Yeah, thank you. I promise it will be completely correct at the annual meeting.
Okay, Christina Peterson has a question. Do we still pay someone in the chair? Don't fully understand that question about the chair. I don't know if someone else has some insight on that.
I think she means the choir.
Okay, sorry.
I believe the choir was a music contractor, correct?
Yeah, and occasionally we do still have people who sing or play instruments that are considered contract workers.
Didn't we pay Kyle for a while?
As a contractor.
Thanks.
Okay.
Are the preschool teachers considered staff? Yes, they are. But there has been a reduction in them this year.
Also, the preschool is not part of this budget.
Any other questions?
So is this a time to ask about the revenue number, or will there be additional drill down for that?
So with the revenue number we have here on the thing is we have the carry forward number of 80,000. And then for the revenue number, the 692, that's made up of giving of 450, City of Lake Oswego of 100K, and then parish driven income of 142K. And so that total up equals our $692,000. And so the total revenue plus carry forward is 772,000.
So it looked like the pledge number was 398, is that right?
That is correct. And so as we have every year, we have that people that give in addition to their pledge or do not, or have not pledged. And that's is included in that giving number.
And what was assumed for that?
Approximately 50,000.
And that's a historical number that we've seen year over year over year and is fairly conservative.
And then what was the rest of the revenue made up of? The 80,000 really isn't a revenue number. That was a carry forward already reflected in the top line there, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So the revenue number is the 692 exclusive of the 80,000.
Correct.
Correct.
So if I take the 692 and I take out the pledge number of 398 and then another 50,000 for assumed plate and additional giving, which I think is a fair number, we're still short of the 692 by, I don't know, I don't.
So the City of Lake Oswego, we're expecting 100,000 of income.
And that's been a pretty consistent amount of money.
Yes, absolutely. They have a guarantee that they have to pay, and then that is a very conservative number based on the usage that we've seen over 2020.
No, that's 2020, honey. That doesn't show that. Yeah. Yeah.
And then parish driven, which is from the endowments, using them per the restrictions that are placed on those endowments. We're making sure that we're covering all those covenants and pulling out using any money towards those covenants and using it wisely. So we do have that to continue.
So Brian, does that only reflect the revenue from the endowment, or does that consist of some removal of principal?
That is a removal of principal in accordance with the covenants of those endowments.
So some of that may be restricted endowment, but the amount that is removed is consistent with the gift as specified. And you went through all of those to verify that that's the case.
Correct. So for instance, we have a youth endowment that we can use to fund the youth program, and it has a percentage of the endowment that can be pulled out each year. And so based on what we needed from the budget, we did not hit that maximum, but we pulled what we needed to cover part of the youth program, and it will be used purely for that. That's just an example, and it's not that whole dollar amount, but that's an example of one.
I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ed.
Given that the City of Lake Oswego is expanding their programs at our facility, are they paying more next year in 2021?
So the commitment that they've given us when we redid their contract, it was an increase on the guarantee that they pay us. The other portion of that revenue comes from the amount of time and space they use and how frequently they use that. So we did a little bit of projecting to understand when vaccines come through and COVID may subside, and in the summer, are we going to expect additional use of space for their programs in the fall and into winter? That number that is on there is a conservative number, taking into account what we think they're going to use, plus the guaranteed payment that they have to be able to use our building. Okay. Allison, do you want to add anything to that?
That's absolutely correct. We've already started conversations with them about summer programming, et cetera. So we have now 3 years of experience, Ted. what they have paid, and we've had last year to kind of budget that against. So I really feel that that number is, as somebody said, conservative in terms of that, but it's, which is great, but also I know we can.
Not guaranteed, but based on experience.
Yes, yeah. What is guaranteed is $85,000. And then what we had last year from them, even with COVID, we got $35,000, right? So on a top of our contract.
Yeah.
So this is a conservative number, right? I mean, like the world could go to, in a handbasket tomorrow or Wednesday or whatever. So my prediction making capacity is very limited. I think this is a conservative budget.
Okay.
Based on what we think is going to happen. Yes.
Thank you.
The boxes I see, the small boxes to the right on the display, it says revenues for 2020, expenses for 2020. Are we talking about 2021 or 2020?
That's correct. It should say 2021.
Yes.
This is what you get when you work late on a Saturday night, Raj. It's terrible.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was totaling it. I was finding it 692. So.
Any other questions? Just to put it out there, as Allison had mentioned, everyone has been incredibly generous with their gifts, right? And as we look at this budget, it's tight. And as we call a new rector, we're giving that flexibility for that new person, but we are bringing someone in without a deacon and without an associate rector because we just don't have it there to do that. So as we look into 2021, if there are opportunities for you to, look into your heart and find a place to call more to our community and come into fellowship and try and put in resources so that we have those things as a community, then obviously that's always encouraged, but it's what we have here is what we need to operate. It's not extras, but it's what we need to operate. But if there are things that we feel as a community we need, we're going to need to find the funding to cover those. So.
Any other questions so I can let these people get about their day? Oh, I want you all to fill out the poll. We'll just take a little minute. It'll give you a chance to consider your questions. But if you'll go to at the bottom of your screen, I'm assuming I'm on a laptop. I know sometimes it's different if you're on a iPad or phone, but on the bottom of my laptop, it says polling. And if you click on that, you will get, you will see what's happened. 68% of you have already voted. So if you would like to add your votes, do you like cake or do you like pie? This is the way we're going to vote with about a slate of candidates for both vestry and diocesan convention. So diocesan delegates. So this is the way we will vote next Sunday.
And Allison, assuming that we get back together sometime this year, will this determine what we have on the table after services?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. At our first time back together, we will have whoever wins. Apparently, it looks like cake is winning. We have a long history at Christ Church of cake for every occasion, generally supplied by Costco. Costco, it doesn't make big sheet cakes anymore since the pandemic. But maybe once the pandemic is over, they will again return to producing full-size sheet cakes. We can be hopeful about that. Some of the things we've lost that we didn't even know we lost. There you go. Well, thank you all. Anything else from the Finance Committee? I want to thank you guys for your work and the vestry for voting.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you to everybody for your hard work. And I know I was the biggest pain in the behind today, but I this is what I do. I follow numbers. And so I was really trying to understand them. And I realized that a lot of this was done last night and not as easy to follow as it otherwise would have been. So anyway, thank you for your patience with me.
No, thank you for reminding us that, we're responsible to many people. Not just Jesus. Yeah. So, anyone else before we go?
I just want to say thank you to the finance committee, just as someone who 2 years ago took over where our finances were, and to be able to have, albeit still some need to get some expertise from Mike and Sydney, right? To have the ability to present streamlined numbers like this was not something 24 months ago we could do. So I just want to say great work, and I really appreciate the effort.
Echoed that. I think you'll see a lot of nodding heads on your little screen there. It is something. I know more about finances now than I ever wanted to. Probably all for the good of the glory of God or something like that. All right. Well, it looks like
Thank you, Vestry.
Cake wins. Cake wins and finance. And this is our budget, which you will see presented next week by the treasurer and 3 participants with their hand. Darlene, did you have something else you wanted to say? Or Rob?
Yes, this is Richard. I had just one point. You kind of already touched on it, Allison, which is just a plug in for next week. I'm like I said at the outset, I think this is a really great, strong budget. It's a tight budget, but it's a strong budget in that it's balanced. And I'm excited about our all parish meeting next week. So I'm hoping everybody attends. And if we don't have any further questions, I would end the meeting today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hereby ended. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you, everyone, for the hard work.
Thank you very much.
Allison, thank you as always for being lovely.
Oh, sure. It's easy to be lovely with you all.
Oh, not always. We can be a lot, but.
Well, thank you for the staff for showing up today. I really appreciate it. Yeah, good to see you all. And happy birthday, Julie Mankin. Julie,
Yes, happy birthday, Julie.
We're gonna go eat brunch in the cold somewhere outside. It's gonna be awesome.
Much. Good.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Allison.